Welcome back to the beautiful city of Busan, South Korea, the GES 2020. It is a pleasure to be here with you and welcome you back to the panel discussion that will be on expanding markets and brand partners. Additionally, we'll be discussing marketing diversity marketing in esports. So please join me in welcoming the panelists for this panel, starting with Nalain Naidoo, the head of business development for the International Academy of Sports Science and Technology. David Halegua, the experiential and activations manager at the Coca-Cola Company. Mark Garvey Candella, the director of student and education programs at Twitch. Niles Heron, the chief strategy officer at Loaded. And Samy Ouerfelli, the head of new business at Freaks4U Gaming. Thank you all of our wonderful panelists for being here for this discussion on expanding markets and brand partners, and welcome to Busan.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I haven't been in Busan since 2011.
Well, welcome back virtually, and we hope that all of our guests can have an opportunity in the near future to be a part of a live experience here in Busan. But in the meantime, thank you so much for joining me for this discussion on expanding markets and brand partners, and specifically on diversity marketing in esports. Not only is gaming and esports very diverse, I wanted to start our discussion by kind of throwing out some numbers. In some previous conversations that I had with our panelists, we discussed a little bit about the diversity or lack thereof in gaming and esports, and some of the numbers that we threw around were the discrepancies between the two fields. So for instance, in gaming, the diversity between men and women is basically 50-50, but for esports, I believe the numbers that we discussed were about 95% predominantly males playing esports, and that's as esports athletes, but there's a lot of diversity to discuss. So I just wanted to start with the first question being kind of what is the state of diversity in gaming and esports, and what are the different diverse marketing opportunities? What are the different demographics involved in the gaming and esports area?
I mean, hi, this is Niles, and I don't know if you ever want to direct questions away to or for me, I will happily take your cue, but I mean, I think the first thing I wanted to say when it comes to diversity is that it becomes really dangerous to consider diversity just across gender or just across race, just across location, disability, ability, sexual orientation. Any of these categories represent core facets of human experience and core sort of vectors along which human experience gets either marginalized or opened up, right? And so for me, when I think about diversity, it's really about, especially in the context of marketing, it's about what are the ways that people feel seen. It's about what are the ways that people feel like they're brought into their home and made to feel safe. And the thing about gaming that is fundamentally so beautiful is that it should be an implicitly safe action. It's something that you can do in an environment you control that allows you to connect with people without real physical consequence to anything that happens there. And yet we see such a sort of like singular representation often of what gamers look like. And I think that it's a marketing loss because the less I feel at home, the less I feel represented in the marketing that exists within a space, the less I'm likely to participate commercially.
I would like to actually say, just to add to that, I think from the diversity perspective is that there is, it's more about inclusion and not so much exclusion. And I think this is a platform that the world of esports brings to all either race, when it comes to female gender, equality, disability, etc. And I think especially when the focus between traditional sport and esports comes in, with the traditional athletes, you actually seem to be receiving more accessibility awareness on the esport platforms, where you can connect closer with Olympic athletes, you could talk to them. So I find that the esport platforms and networks are opening up closer and increasing this opportunity to get to speak to people on a different level, and it's becoming more and more accessible. And from a sponsor's perspective, which is something that I really work in and look into with traditional sport versus a shift of spend into esport, I find it quite interesting that with esport, you have more direct access mobile through mobile networks, esports platforms, in comparison to, if you were on traditional platforms of advertising like television, etc. So you have a higher engagement with a larger network through an esport platform, and this constantly is growing.
I can add maybe one more thing to Nalain, echoing her. And moreover, but I can say esports is a more democratized place for all people, actually. Besides your gender, besides your race, besides everything you have as a personal attribute, if you're a good player, if you're working hard, then you have a place there. Of course, your income, if you have a PC, if you have a Wi-Fi, this infrastructure is of course important. But besides all that, these diversity actually enriching this platform, and you have equal access inside, and you have equal chance with everyone if you want to be inside this ecosystem.
Yeah, I really don't like thinking about these societal constructs at all, as we operate within a digital medium for the most part. I really like, I mainly work with students in the education space, and we try to think about what contributions look like, what inputs and outputs look like. Everything can be qualified and quantified in this space, and it really does stand outside of these societal constructs. I would like to say artificial societal constructs. And I really think that's important, especially in the education space, for diversity of thought, and have people's voices heard, and to build that personal equity, and to feel vested within something that respects you so much. So I think this is a really important discussion, especially in the digital medium. Again, I think there's a home for everybody here, and it should be based on contributions that can be qualified and quantified.
I would just double tap on one thing that Dave said. Sorry, Samy, I will be very brief. But diversity in this construct really should be expanded to include socioeconomic status, because there is a real access gap in digital divide. I come from a city called Detroit, Michigan, and in Detroit, Michigan, there is a 50% broadband penetration rate, which means that 50% of the city can't participate in gaming, can't participate in esports because of a simple technology access position. And while everything further that we talk about will be a discussion about the participants that exist above that access barrier, there is an access barrier that we should not take for granted, even though it's lower than you would say in many other sports like lacrosse. It is a much lower barrier than lacrosse, but that doesn't mean that it's not there. So sorry, Samy, go ahead.
No, it's fine, actually, and I really like what you said at the beginning. So I think I will just complete what everyone said by just saying something more broad, which is basically including diversity in our marketing teams is not only the opportunity to do the right thing by being culturally sensitive and helping to level the playing field among the gaming population, but also it means you may well increase your chance of being successful in creating a brand that is loved. That's pretty much all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of want to build on what Samy just said there, talking about kind of the benefits of additional diversity. So my next question to all of our panelists is, I think we can agree that more diversity is a good thing, but when we're talking about it in a from a marketing standpoint, why is more diversity good for businesses in esports or for marketing when it comes to gaming and esports?
I can say something about that. In esports, we don't have standard demographic distinctions, actually. We see target audience as a whole, but in tribes, and distinctions such as age, gender, and so on are not important for us. There is only one distinction. There should be only one distinction between esports. This person is a gamer or a spectator. That's the most important thing for us, because audiences' habits differ in terms of daily routines, and these routines are creating their journeys. So we should just look at their journeys to understand what are those players are doing, when, where, and how. The important thing to reach them, actually. And maybe if we add something as a second dimension, we can say these players are mobile native or not. So diversity in our methodology is essential. If these tribes that we are focusing on have a homogeneous distribution inside, then we'll know that we are reaching every single person that is interested in gaming or esports. That brings us the inclusivity again.
I could actually add to that, and I think that in terms of marketing and marketing spend in regarding diversity, and I would like to focus on the fact that although currently, as you mentioned, 95% is targeted to male, but they're young and they're major influencers. And from my experience in terms of sponsorship and marketing, you actually don't target the parent to buy something. You target the youth to influence the parent. And this is directly tapping into a market that's actually going to say to the parent, this is a trendy pair of shoes. And therefore, esports opens a platform where youth can actually influence their parents. But I also like to touch on the fact that on the traditional side of sport, where you actually see more money being spent in gaming and online platforms from the shift of a McDonald's budget that would normally have been on a television commercial, but now in-game advertising. You see the trends going up during peak gaming hours. So from a sponsor's perspective, I think you know that you're going to have immediate impact on the sales if you are in an in-game ad versus a generic television commercial. And I think given COVID, this is also a very important topic in terms of marketing, because when events could not be delivered, the shift to playing on a e-platform is much higher. And now for federations, international federations, it's actually becoming more and more difficult to sign up top partners and sponsors without offering them an esport platform. So if you just offer them traditional advertising, you're less likely to actually sign that contract. So I think most federations are really looking into having an esports side to it. Yeah, and that's more my take on the marketing spend in terms of diversity and contact to the target audience.
I'd like to say in the education space, I think it's really important. I don't make the distinction when I'm working with students in education between esports and gaming. I joke around with some of the esports clubs that I helped start. And a year later, I would go to them and say, wow, congratulations, you guys have built the most exclusive, inclusive, and diverse community I've ever met. And they'd be like, what are you talking about? We have a 47, 53% split between young women and young men. I said, yes, but you're only, the program's only for 8% of your student body that identify as esports enthusiasts, but 80% of your student body actually identify as gamers. But if we take it a step further and we start talking about how gaming and esports is really a great medium to learn emerging new and digital media skills and apply it in a really fun way, now you're talking about creating opportunity and diversity for the entirety of the student body. So I just wanted to make that one little comment in the education space. I think it's really important that we work with gamers, esports enthusiasts, but also show others how they can apply what they're learning in school to a brand new industry in fun ways with a great community.
I really like what you were talking about there, Garvey, and also Niles mentioning that a lot of traditional demographic breakdowns don't really apply when you look at kind of the different journeys that gamers take through their experience of, I guess, traditional marketing. And I think that's starting to change the way that they are marketed too. And so an additional question that I kind of wanted to ask in the context of diversity is what are the opportunities that esports and gaming offer to companies in their marketing portfolio that they can't achieve by spending that marketing budget elsewhere? Why is gaming and esports so essential, and is it because it allows them to market to these this very diverse audience?
I would say that I love David's perspective. I also think you gave me credit for a point that David made a second ago. But listen, I think we try to overcomplicate things. We try to make this not 2 + 2, and it really just is 4. Like, this is not hard. Gaming and interactive media is the single most powerful way, the single best way to reach the audience of below. We are legally allowed to measure through 30, period. There is no debate. It's bigger than movies. It's bigger than music. It's bigger than any traditional sport in that demographic. And it's not very close. I had a single client in 2018 personally outperform the movie Black Panther in terms of minutes watched, in the same 6-month window that the box office measured the movie. My daughter, she is 10. She knows like Beyonce and Ariana Grande, and the next 7 people are YouTubers. Right? This is the way media is moving, and that's across race and demographic. The only, in fact, binary line that distinguishes whether or not you are more a product of interactive digital media where gaming is a core feature or not is age. It is the only thing. And that's because it's a question of whether or not you were raised with a tablet in your hand or raised with implicit connectivity. I remember before I had internet, right? I knew what to do before there was internet. I know what books do when you open them. I know how that works. Kids in 10 years won't. The faster you integrate your marketing strategy and learn how to reach out to people in this very digital, very interactive medium, the better your brand is going to be for the long haul. That is the argument that I would make.
You're so true, Niles. Maybe one more thing just to add. In the beginning of this panel, there were some data. Half of the world population is interested in gaming, and we know esports is the main component of gaming right now. So for a brand, what is better rather than gaming or esports nowadays, reaching half of the world population? Is there any other asset that's leading you in the digital way, or for this target audience, leading you to that point? There's nothing. And more to Niles again, I think we can say right now, among all those assets, music, traditional sports, movies, and etc., gaming is #1 right now. With the pandemic, accelerated like dramatically, I can say. Now it's the leading asset. So we have to be here. We have no other choice, actually.
Can I quickly also add from a woman perspective that I think what we are also missing, and Niles, I understand what you mentioned earlier regarding the accessibility to the different platforms and the income differences with having access to it. But if you look at a market like India, where there is such a huge opportunity with the female woman target audience, because now data is becoming more and more cheaper in India. It's actually probably one of the lowest in the world, that you have more and more women on their mobile phones gaming daily, you know. So in the past, we could not connect with this this unique target audience who are huge influences in their children's lives or their family lives. And now this market has actually opened up through the eSport platform.
No, it's absolutely true. Another just random client testimonial is that when you look at like YouTube viewership breakdown demographics on videos, we consistently see women between the ages of 30 and 40 as one of the largest viewing segments for any of our creators. And of course, let's be honest, it's not women between 30 and 40 watching these videos, it's their kids that are below the age of 13 and don't yet have YouTube accounts, that are watching on mom's tablet, that are watching on mom's phone, that are watching on mom's computer. But to ignore that connection would be foolish. Because when you talk about algorithm presentation of marketing, advertising, and anything like that, I mean, like, you know, it's watched on your account. This is stuff that's happening in the background of your phones and tablets and all of that stuff. And I think that it's an important demo to pay attention to, for sure. And that's just speaking to the distant, the sort of like reflected audience, not even the primary core audience, which, as you said, is more and more and more. In fact, the only place that esports is not diverse, gaming is not diverse, is the presentation of it. Everyone who plays, everyone who watches are very diverse. The people who are playing on camera, the people who are often on these panels, this is like we can applaud diversity. We have this is a quite diverse panel, actually. This is one of the most diverse panels I've ever been on in gaming. This is where we are not diverse, though, right? It's in the people that are doing the marketing, doing the management, doing the gaming, like doing the talking about it. It's often very white, very male, candidly. At least in the States, that is the case. I can't speak to the global discussion.
Yeah, so I will just say something because for the first time I disagree a bit with what have been said before. I think that we are basically talking about both gaming and esports, while the diversity in both ecosystems is completely different. I totally agree with all of you if we're looking at gaming industry, definitely. But when it comes to esports, I don't have the feeling. On top of that, this feeling is more accurate with the numbers I got from various teachers I'm working with. In esports, we have a serious diversity issue. I mean, it's with women particularly. I didn't see any offline competition in Europe with more than 5% women attempted it. I never saw more than, I would say, 2 to 3% of disabled people during a competition. I hardly saw any competition for disabled people for the past 5 years. Now it's starting to grow. So I think we really need to split esports and gaming. I mean, there is this diversity gap is less important in gaming because most of the people are playing casually. And when we talk about casual, if you look at all the numbers, we're on mobile. And yes, it's way more accessible for way more people and way more easy for everyone. Whatever your social is, whatever your I don't know how to say that, but basically it's not as time consuming as esports, so basically everyone can consume it. While esports is very particular, and I felt that you were all the time talking about gaming, while in esports we have a serious issue with diversity. This is my point of view.
I think that's 100% correct. I often use both thoughts interchangeably because I pay attention to the entertainment consumption of gaming content and manage and broker that. So 100% correct. Samy is right. I am speaking about gaming, competitive gaming, but gaming, not traditionally the 8% bucket that I think was referenced earlier, right? Esports being 8% of the total gaming content consumed. I'm speaking about the 100% gaming video content market, so that's important.
Well, with a bit of a runway, we're trying to address it in the university space as well. So I don't know if anybody's really familiar with what's going on in the university space now, but for the past 6 years, it's really been growing quite well. There's over 500 universities now with varsity scholarship esports programs. So we took a step backwards towards the end of last year and we started working with historically Black colleges and universities. We helped found the first HBCU Esports League, and that's where we started identifying what Niles was talking about. The greatest problem we're having with diversity right now in the education space is a lack of internet access and devices to be able to play on, especially now during this pandemic. It's been very, very difficult for a lot of students, especially in the rural South, that you just can't, they can't even do their school assignments. But there's projects that's being put together. We have 2 HBCU esports. We have a Yard Alliance now. I'm working with the Thousand Dreams Foundation, and we have scholarships going out to young women as well. And we don't only focus when we do all these scholarships and working with the universities. We don't only focus on the players themselves. We make sure that there's scholarships for marketing students that might want to apply digital marketing through their esports program, art students, the whole entire enchilada, if you will, of what goes on behind the scenes in esports. The Twitch student program is doling out scholarships for everybody that could be a part of it. We're trying to put together some stream teams as well, with young women, with HBCUs all over the world, actually. I'm working in 26 countries now, and we're trying to break those barriers down by giving people the education, empowering them, giving the confidence to actually go out and try something, learn it, be a part of it, be a part of the community, and try to open people's hearts that way and get people involved that way. And I know it's a little bit of a longer runway than most people might like to think about, but there's sustainability in this. When we're talking about diversity, when we're talking about equity and inclusion, there's a little bit of a runway, but there are people that's working on the longer term approach by getting people educated, empowered, and understanding that in a digital medium with zeros and ones, we don't want to hear anything about artificial societal constructs. We want to look at inputs and outputs, contributions and results. And I think that's a great step forward, especially in the education space, to remove a lot of that stigma around esports. And I'm proud to say, in North America at least, there's a 47-53% split between young ladies and young men in the official esports programs. The problem is, as many of you were pointing out, is most of the competitors that are actually on broadcasts, on Twitch, on YouTube, on Facebook Gaming, whatever the case may be, are predominantly young white males. But the entire infrastructure that supports it, everything.
It's a lagging indicator, though. Right. And that's the key. I think, at least specifically when it comes to esports participation, the top of the funnel that Garvey is talking about, we're doing similar things in Detroit, right? We're building out gaming centers in boys and girls clubs, just because we know they're walkable, safe locations, so we don't have to worry about asset issue or the physical asset issues. And then we're figuring out how do we give kids access, because you have this, dramatic pipeline sort of disconnection. Listen, gaming saved my life. It is not a question. I was 15 and 14 and 13 and 17 and ambitious and young and in an inner city, and I was able to drive my ambitions through a computer. I was able to say, I want to be on the radio. I want to do things. So I built a radio station because the internet was something that allowed that. Right? That same ambition would have been directed elsewhere were this avenue not presented to me, and that ambition often would have ended me in not where I am today, candidly. Right? I think that access matters so much. I think we have to be creating programs like what Garvey is talking about at HBCUs. I've actually talked to some of Garvey's, he doesn't even know this, but I've worked with some of the people over at some of those HBCUs that are building out these esports programs, and it's real and good work. But you have to be intentional. You have to decide to go get women, to get people who are representing different walks of life, and give them the access, and then let them do what they will do. And then 10 years, hopefully, we'll see a very different landscape here. 5 years.
I speak here on the education side, on the traditional sports side, and I can tell you that, really here you can see it from Lausanne with most of the federations that are based here, because I've been reaching out to them to understand what their shift is in terms of education and engaging with their athletes in the different sports. And you could see it, from the International Ski Federation, who actually said, we have a lot of gamers, but they're so young. How do we get the older skiers and winter sport guys to get back onto gaming? You look at the Swiss, not Swiss, sorry, but Cycling Federation, what an impact it's actually had through online cycling. And the same with FIBA or the football games. And I think here there is a high push on diversity. More women are actually playing the different sports because the different federations are making the efforts to actually create online gaming within their field of sport. And this is a big trend in terms of education. They're educating their athletes, both in traditional sport as well as esports. So I see a big gap still, but I also see the gap closing as big steps are being taken now by international sport federations.
On a marketing perspective, adding to all those valuable speeches, definitely agree with Samy and moreover to my other colleagues here. I can say we can see for closing this gap, women-only organizations, tournaments, teams, content creations, and etc. are happening nowadays, and it's of course helping to close this gap. Moreover to that, we realize that tapping into the same subject again and again, pointing all the eyes to the same place, and it's a little bit frustrating for the target audience for some time. So what we found as a solution lately, equal participation of both genders in every content, in every tournament, in everything we are doing. Not saying that we are doing that, but doing that. So equal participation in every aspect of gaming and of course in esports. And this target audience is watching this equal participation every time when they face with our assets. Not fast, but I know slowly will change this ecosystem. And in the end, hopefully, again, crossing my fingers, equal participation of genders will be in this ecosystem as well.
To conclude on that, yeah, I agree with everything that has been said this time. And to go back to what Niles said 20 minutes ago, we have to keep in mind that the new way to do marketing for the young audience is basically to have role model influencers. And to have influencers that can tap into the esports ecosystem, we need to create this role model. We don't have role model for women right now. We have some of them. I could name, I don't know, 5, 6. What I could name, I don't know, 25 men or maybe even 50. And all these initiatives that you all talked about, especially these university initiatives Garvey mentioned, that is, according to me, great, should happen in every country, should be global as much as possible. And this way, we will create more diversity. That's my point.
I'm trying. I have India on my radar coming up next year, Southeast Asia, and I'll be hitting Africa as well. So I'll be in all 5 continents next year, and we'll start spreading out. And with a little support for students and putting their mind in the right place and looking at this business in a different way. And again, it's really valuable for marketing as well, because at least on my side, I see that every student broadcaster brings in a huge amount of new and born viewers onto the platform. So I would extrapolate from that it's a really valuable marketing tool to support these young influencers as they're growing new communities and new spaces.
All right, thank you all for your great conversation. Makes my job easier when everybody just talks amongst themselves. And I think that there is a lot to talk about when it comes from the diversity aspect. But when you look at it from a marketing standpoint, whether you are from a major company or you are representing a diverse organization, like we heard from our previous keynote speech, if you're looking from a marketing standpoint and you're looking at the gaming space, do you see just an audience for your product, or do you see like a unique way to reach people that are, I guess, much more difficult to reach through traditional means? We mentioned influencers and the rise of slipping advertising into the stream of content that people consume as a new way. Is that the real draw to marketing as it applies to esports and gaming?
Exactly.
Yeah, good. There you go.
I can say exactly. Traditional media is, of course, we are still using it. We can't avoid that. There's a huge opportunity in traditional media. But let's be honest. For that target audience, you should create new ways. Influencers, one of them. Streaming platforms, one of them. Content creation, cooperation with games or teams or players are one of them. Now, for that asset and for that target audience, I can briefly say traditional media is maybe 10%, 15% of all marketing expenses nowadays. The rest are for those partnerships, are for those cooperation with other games, maybe with other brands, with other teams, and etc. So to reach that target audience, you have to be where they're standing, actually. They are not consuming TV, they are not consuming radio, they are not consuming the out-of-home media anymore. They are at home, they are with their mobile phones, they are with their consoles, they are in gaming, or they're watching their favorite influencers or broadcasters in Twitch, D-Live, Nemo TV, and etc. So if you want to reach them, you have to be there. No other way for that.
Yeah, meet them where they are. And besides that, traditional linear media is missing a very important component, I think, for the last 5 years and moving forward, and that's engagement. With traditional linear media, you don't really have engagement factors. If you look at the platforms that's available to us in this industry, you can not only show how many eyeballs are on a product, but you can show the engagement of your community, right? Different platforms have different engagement factors. Like Twitter, you can have retweets, likes, and comments. On YouTube, you can have subscribe and likes. On Twitch, we even have how often people chat. In the chat could show how engaged people are. And I think that's really, really important moving forward when we're looking at digital media, and as we're looking at this as a business, as we're looking at this in marketing, we could never, ever forget the fact that we have many, many points of engagement that shows the value of working within this space.
The only thing I would add from an influencer or content creator side of that fence is that you have how many channels of TV now? 1,000, maybe, right? But of those channels of TV, let's be honest, like 70 of them matter, right? But you can't program any of it. Well, there are like 10,000 people live at any given time, right? Think about each of those as a channel. When I watch ABC versus NBC, I'm not actually making much of a distinction. Like, I don't think of those two entities as being different. But when I watch Shroud versus Summit, those are fundamentally different channels, right? What I'm getting from those creators, King Richard versus Quarter Jade, Jordan Fisher versus Tim the Tatman, those are fundamentally different channels. And I think for that reason, when you choose one, it matters to you as the viewer. It's not the same as choosing between ABC and NBC anymore, ESPN versus Stars or HBO. I don't think of them as at corporate level as being like different people. I think they're all the same people behind these channels, right? But I know that that's not the case with the creators. And as a consequence, I care more about what product is endorsed. I chose Summit for a reason. I chose Ammunition for a reason. And so when Ammunition loads up her phone in the middle while she's in the lobby queuing up in Rainbow Six Siege and she orders Postmates, it matters to me. And for that reason, we see those sort of integrated campaigns indexing like 6x, 7x, 8x over the baseline advertising value. in terms of the number of signups, the amount of value driven from the marketing. The marketing is more valuable here because the person who is endorsing the product matters to the viewer here more than in any other medium. Because they were chosen out of 10,000 options. This was who I wanted to watch, right? And so that really matters, especially when you talk about, again, a generally young audience that also just isn't fundamentally available elsewhere. So you get like a 2x multiplier. And I know that we have to stop for Q&A, so I'll shut up. But the marketing means more here when it works. It's harder to make it work.
I'd just like to say,
you win.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, if you want to see where things are going and what young people are thinking about, so there's a new concept called the passion economy, if anybody wants to look it up. And instead of having these big networks, these ABCs, the NBCs, the passion economy, which is built on two philosophies, right? Compassionate capitalism and social entrepreneurship. It's breaking down those NBCs into individual broadcasters. And instead of one big, huge media company, as several thousand smaller media companies that might be a broadcaster, an agency, and maybe somebody that does their marketing, their art, their social media, small little companies that work together as opposed to being under one big conglomeration. So it's the passion economy, if you want to Google it. It's what all the students are talking about. They're all fighting for it. I love it myself, so.
Wow. Well, as Niles mentioned, we are coming to the end of our discussion as a panel. And I just want to thank each one of you for adding your expertise, your perspective to this really complicated and subtly nuanced topic of not only diversity in the gaming and esports spheres, but also how it applies to marketing and advertising in this new and very rapidly developing space. It's wonderful to have you all here to discuss all of these points with us. So thank you very much to each one of you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, everybody.
All right.
I enjoyed this quite a bit.
Well, we're not quite. Oh, I apologize for the interruption there. We're not quite done yet with all of you. We're going to keep you around to answer a few questions from our online viewers. So I do want to thank all of you while you were watching for submitting your questions. We'll go ahead and get to them now. Starting off with our first questions. Do you think that senior citizens will be more involved or more mainstream in the future of the gaming community?
Niles, wasn't there that CSGO team that just came out with, I read an article on it. I wasn't involved in it. Wasn't it like 70 or 75-year-old?
The Silver Snipers.
Silver
Yes.
Snipers.
And we had the Piano Man. What was he, like 70 years old, the Piano Man? And he was averaging like 25,000 CCU on Twitch.
I think it's unquestionable that age will stop being such a significant factor towards participation. But that's also because, like, you know, time is. I feel like 2020 has destroyed the idea that time is real. Like, time is completely an illusion. It's a farcical concept in my life these days because I don't go anywhere because I just sit in this room. But listen, at some point we will be 20 years from now and I will still like video games, but I will be 54 and not 34. So in that regard, like, it's inevitable that people at some point, septuagenarians, octogenarians, they will be digital native octogenarians, and that will change yet again the way all of this stuff works. Do I think that there is going to be a rush of current 70-year-olds into the esports world? No, I don't.
I just want to add something to this. We already started to integrate senior people in France. For example, we have a huge program, which is basically a battle between retirement homes and was the final on stage during our esports event. And it's massive. I can't share the video here on Zoom, but it's called Silver Geek. It's only in France for now, but we intend to scale it to Europe. And it's really huge. Without the COVID, we would have the final at Paris Games Week, which is the second largest trade show in Europe. So we are basically already building from the ground something that will be usable for all the future generation. So yeah, this is a very good example of integration and diversity.
No, that's awesome.
All right, let's move on to another question from the chat. Is dividing game servers by region helpful or harmful for esports diversity, and how does that affect the diverse makeup of the server? I'm not sure this directly applies, as I don't think any of you own gaming servers of your own, but any thoughts on the diversity of dividing game servers by region and whether or not that's harmful or helpful for esports?
I have a really interesting activation that happened last year into this year. We held Magic the Gathering Arena tournaments, and we held it in the United Kingdom and North America to test it out. And Magic the Gathering was quite a unique case because there's only basically two servers, one for mainland China, one for the rest of the world. And because it's a card game, there wasn't latency issues. You didn't need high-end computers as well. So besides doing one-year national tournament structures, every month we would have what we called the Battle of the Atlantic, and whoever was leading in the UK would play whoever's leading in North America. So we could have these monthly show matches. And I just thought that was great for students to start getting to know each other, start seeing this industry for what it is, this global experience. We have the University Esports Masters in Europe as well, and it's 12 countries. They compete for all year long, but at the end of the year, we bring the #1 teams to a different country every year. And it's not so much the competition now, it's more hearing different languages, having different experiences, eating different food, meeting different friends from around the world, and then they go to, the top 2 from that goes to an international tournament. It would be nice if we could do something like that right now, but we can't because of all the different servers. If you look at some game companies, there's 2 or 3 different servers in Europe alone, no less North America.
From a brand perspective, I can say for brand integrations among single countries or among regions, for us, actually it's essential. Not every time you can have a chance to make a global agreement with a game, with a global game. Mostly you are targeting an audience just in a country or a region. So a private, as we can say here, mostly help us to integrate on that games, and not actually. Actually, it's helping for the diversity. I can say in our region, in our countries. I can say it's useful actually.
I can say that from a player perspective, as now I think I only play first-person shooters, which says a lot about the type of human that I am. But I really, really dislike when I have dramatic communication barriers as a player, especially in communication necessary games, right? So like, I don't mind if I'm playing Among Us with anybody anywhere in the world, but it's really difficult, candidly, to play Valorant with people from Brazil playing on North American servers, because they don't speak, because I can't like talk to them to say, here's strategically what we need to do as a team. And that makes it very difficult. And candidly, I'm one of the more mature participants in that industry, and it leads to a lot of toxicity. You also have implicit ping and latency issues when you start crossing large bodies of land or water. And that makes it really difficult. There's unquestionably an impact on the playing experience when you go trans-region for a lot of games, and that is, I think, why you won't see it happen for a while. I hope that it can happen in a mature and good way, though. It would be amazing. It doesn't work right now.
All right, thank you very much for your answers. Let's move on to our next question. Are there any special strategies to target the younger generation's parents in esports marketing to make them feel like their children are in a safe and productive space?
But again, I could. Oh, you go first, David, please.
Please, Garvey. No problem.
So the way I address this in the education space is when we come up with curriculum, because we also help universities and high schools create curriculum for their esports programs. But I'm very emphatic when I say, please don't say esports marketing. So I want to make sure that a university president feels as good as a parent would feel for their children going and taking these classes. So we'll do a marketing class, but I'll always say it'll be marketing in emerging new and digital media through gaming and esports. And you could juxtapose marketing with business, with journalism, with physiotherapy, whatever the case may be. But I always include right after the subject matter, emerging new and digital media, and then gaming and esports. This way the parents know that it's something productive. They're highly valuable and transferable skills for the 21st century moving forward. And the college presidents feel good about it. It's STEM enrollment, right? But the students really, again, it's meet them where they are. I think, David, you said that. That's one of the mottos for the Twitch student program is meet them where they are. So we tag on esports and gaming, and we create the program where it's not just classroom studies. They walk out of the classroom, they become a part of the community and actually apply it. So when they graduate, they have this great portfolio with not school projects, but actually real executions that have inputs and outputs that can be explained in a qualifiable way.
Another perspective about parents, actually we started to talk to them, not their children, but the parents, because we know lately some genres for gaming they are consuming a lot, like word puzzles, puzzle games, and etc. Now they are there playing, and now I think they understand what their children is spending lots of hours while they are playing. Are they addictive now? Exactly. My mother is a gamer right now. She is addictive. Whenever I'm going to my home city and I'm sitting with her in a meal, right after she finished, she's taking her phone and started playing. Yes, she's a gamer right now. And now I think our parents understand us much more than the previous years. And I think talking to them to change their purchase decisions now have actual outcomes. We were talking to the children because they are influencing the purchase decision before, exactly as Nalain said before. This is totally true. But you can talk to them via games right now, because I can say with the pandemic for the last year, now our parents become gamers.
I also want to add to that. I think the IESF, from having a discussion with Vlad, also gave me a little bit of insight how different competitions are also encouraging young people who are competing to also be physically fit. So it's going the other way around, saying if you want to compete in this game, you need to actually do a physical challenge. Or you have different football federations or big football clubs saying if you want to represent our club, you need to also be physically fit. And I think this also opens up the side from a different direction or channel where parents can see that it's the gaming family that's also encouraging the youth to be fit, and it's not just one way or one direction. It's working in both ways.
Okay. Go ahead.
What I just want to add is basically, in my opinion, parents should always pay attention to what their children is doing, just at least to understand what they're doing and to be able to react. And but I agree that gaming and esports can be sometimes complicated. And for me, this is where the National Federation or national organization, you name it the way you want, should play a role. For us, for example, we are gathered in an organization called France Esports, and we are talking with the government on a daily basis, and we are creating guides the same way influencers create guides on League of Legends or on Valorant. We are creating guides for parents, and we just realized how complex it can be. And as again Niles said at the very beginning of the panel, all the parents don't have the same level of understanding. There is not the same level of education. So this is something the National Federation should take care of, and this is the right way to talk about that.
I just want to double click on something Samy just said. Stop letting tablets and phones and video game consoles babysit your children. Stop it. These are not qualified caregivers for young people. That is not to say they are not valuable tools. That is not to say that there are not safe spaces or productive outcomes that can happen. It's not a substitute for interaction with your kids. And that's a totally different panel for another day. But I feel like you gotta invest time in what your kids like. If they have favorite YouTubers, go watch that person's content, because there are a lot of people making a lot of content that you don't want your kids watching. There are also a lot of people making a lot of content that is fundamentally amazing for you to lean into and bond with your children over. Both things are true, but parent involvement matters so much, especially for kids that are being raised culturally by devices, and not people too often. So just,
Niles,
especially in a pandemic.
Yeah, Niles, I think it's going to be interesting in about 3 years. The first digitally native generation in history is hitting high school in 2 years, right? Generation Alpha, born 2010. So it's going to be really interesting to see what you're talking about, combined with being so digitally savvy, going into high school programs that are actually using esports and gaming to teach these great skills, moving forward into universities that have these great programs to nurture creativity and teamwork and still maintain your individuality. I think it's going to be really interesting. So I would recommend everybody, especially in marketing, do a little research on Generation Alpha. It's actually really, really interesting.
All right, let's move on to our next question. Thank you for those answers and responses. Next question comes from one of our viewers who says, what are some brands or types of brands that you think could benefit the most from developing a marketing relationship with the esports world? So maybe what are some potential brands that you think could benefit greatly from a gaming or esports marketing activation? Or I guess what are some brands that have benefited the most from esports or gaming as part of their marketing effort?
I think I would love to go at this one. It's one of my favorite topics, and having worked for Coke and McDonald's and I'd like to actually say that I love what Mercedes has done. From a marketing perspective, it was always considered a very old brand. It's something your father drove, but when you saw their new ad campaign, I promise you, this is kind of a visionary step by Mercedes to actually connect with gamers and change the vision of this brand. This brand is now trendy. It's what you want to drive, and it's also, I think, in the step in the right direction for changing that brand image. From the beverage platform, I'm going to leave that one to CocaCola because you're going to nail that one. But I will touch on makeup brands. I think female products are just, this platform is where you can engage individually with women and connect with them, and not just with the fake glamour in the world, So I think for makeup brands, if they really want to be authentic and connect with women, this is definitely an area to go in. And as I mentioned earlier, new trends in shoes like On or Cloud Runner. If you want to influence your parents, or parents are influenced through these platforms, through the youth, in marketing new brands, and I think this is a great channel for influencers on product. So I leave the rest to our friends at Coke. And
I was just gonna actually double click on makeup and beauty. Skincare, I think, has skincare, beauty, and self-care, I think, has a huge opportunity. I also think that apparel and fashion to your point, a footwear, right? I mean, we did a deal with Adidas last year to design shoes that were specifically targeting gamers for that exact reason. I think the aspirational pieces, culture. So I talk a lot about Black culture in America, at least, and I think that Black culture brands that target Black culture specifically tend to shy away from gaming because they don't know how to enter it, other than like advertising in the middle of a TV program or something like that. But I think that there's a huge opportunity to speak to specific cultural positions that are currently not represented in the content creators, but is broadly represented within gaming. So.
I know we have 1 minute left, but just a couple of words. I think last couple of years showed us that every brand can represent itself in gaming ecosystem. We can divide it to endemic and non-endemic brands, mostly hardware companies, gaming companies, and etc. that targeting these audience are mainly in that ecosystem. But lately, we see beverage companies, of course, we see some kind of companies that targeting youth or this targeting this audience are inside the ecosystem. But let's say Louis Vuitton made their debut in New Horizons. What on earth you can see something like that if we are talking about 5 years ago? No way. But in the pandemic time, we saw that. We saw many fashion brands are making their debuts in gaming ecosystem. So for this time, for our perspective, I can say every brand can represent itself in the gaming ecosystem right now. Half of the world population, if we are saying here, no brand can avoid itself from this ecosystem and from this target audience, I think.
Esports is a lifestyle.
Yeah.
I agree with that. And to conclude, you always have to keep in mind that if you want to tap into this ecosystem, you need to understand it before advertising. So otherwise, you might fail. And the example of Mercedes is indeed a very good example. Everyone who is doing marketing or interested in marketing should watch the Rise On video because they took their time to do the right thing.
Exactly.
All right, that's going to bring to a close our question and answer session. So once again, I just want to thank our panelists so much for taking their time to be here and for giving us their great comments, responses, and insight into the field of expanding marketing and value with brand partners in a diverse way. A very important topic, and I think we've all heard some really great comments from you all. And I would ask for a round of applause. Hopefully, we'll be able to get one of those for next year. But just thank you so much for being here and for being a part of this panel discussion.